Hey guys, how you doing? All right, so let's talk injuries in jiu-jitsu. So I'm a little bit of an expert on it, having destroyed my body before I got to jiu-jitsu and since. Right, so if you're doing jiu-jitsu reasonably seriously, if you're training like 3 or 4 times a week for years, then it's kind of inevitable that something's going to happen, right? It's whether it's something small like sticking your finger hard into the mat and subluxing your finger, whether it's something more serious like pinging a knee or hurting your shoulder, it's probably going to happen, right? So um, there's two things. A lot of, for example, a lot of my students are over 35, 40, right? So the main reason why the majority of guys start jiu-jitsu, say after 35, is because they want to lose some weight, they want to get in shape. Um, Maybe they've been going to the gym, they're bored at the gym, they don't just want to do that, like they want to do something interesting, and jiu-jitsu seems interesting. And it is, it's fascinating, right? So you get a good workout, you meet lots of people, it's really sociable, um, which going to the gym is not really, everyone kind of just does their own thing. Um, and and it's really interesting mentally, right? So you've got puzzles to solve. Once your life kind of gets settled down, you've got your stable career, you got your wife, you got your kids, everything's kind of cruising along nicely, then guys for the most part get pretty bored. And so that boredom leads them to the pub with their mates, have a few drinks. Maybe there's an indiscretion of the relationship, like stuff kind of compounds, right? So if you go back to like the reason is because they got bored, right? Is that life for them, I don't know, didn't have the same spark and meaning and stuff as what it initially did. And they're looking for that. So they're trying to find it. And so a lot of guys end up in jiu-jitsu in that kind of situation. 10 or 15 kilos overweight, haven't worked out for a few years, have niggly injuries from their childhood or during their 20s. And so, like, most guys will turn up with dodgy knees, with a dodgy shoulder, and other ailments, but shoulders, backs, and knees are by far the most common that people start jiu-jitsu with, right? So it's not that jiu-jitsu will destroy your body. I mean, same as any sport. If you only do that sport, like if you play soccer and the only thing you do is turn up and play soccer matches and play soccer, then you're doing that 4 days a week, and you're not doing other training to balance this, your body's going to tell you pretty quickly that it doesn't like that. So it's really important to keep a good balance on your training. I talk about it all the time, the training triangle of fitness, strength, and flexibility, and to make sure that they're as balanced as possible. So if you're a marathon runner, do some weight training. If you're a marathon runner coming into jiu-jitsu, well, you'll have awesome cardio, but you won't be very strong and you might be lacking flexibility. So more so, the lack of flexibility is more likely to potentially lead to injuries. For example, if you're a weightlifting dude and you're big and strong, well, that's awesome, but you're probably not terribly mobile and terribly athletic. And so, like, that can lead to, injuries, for example. They might not be severe, they're just muscle strains and things not moving right because they haven't had to. You've just been in a gym all your life. And also you might not be terribly fit, right? So, like, the cardio thing, is probably going to be a struggle as well. Equally, if you do yoga and you're coming really flexible, then, well, that's awesome, but you probably need to do a little bit more fitness work and a little bit more strength training just to tighten everything up and make sure that you're not hyper flexible and that you're not putting yourself in precarious situations as well that flexible guys tend to, right? Because their body can fold like that, then they let it, right? But that's not good. It's not good jiu-jitsu, right? I know it's popular and there's schools like 10th Planet that have made folding your body into crazy shapes really popular. But in my opinion, it's not very good jiu-jitsu. As soon as you add strikes to it, people just want to get away and they change the whole way they roll anyway. So I think that the only reason why people develop these bizarre styles of jiu-jitsu and like will pursue excessive flexibility or excessive leg locks and stuff is only because they're not hitting each other. As soon as it's a proper fight, yeah, then everything changes and jiu-jitsu goes back to what I believe it should be for, which is self-protection and intelligent movement and protecting yourself and others. So anyway, back to the injuries. So the most common injuries are shoulders, back, and knees, yeah, and necks a little bit, right? So neck, shoulder, lower back, and knees, right? But that's the same in almost any sport. You go play rugby, same injuries, same parts of the body, and so it's almost unavoidable if you start doing a lot of it. But a way to help mitigate that, don't start too fast too soon. Yeah, so you might be excited. I see a lot of guys in their like late teens, early 20s get very excited by jiu-jitsu. They want to be on the mat every day and they're literally addicted to it, you know, and that addictive compulsive component is really dangerous, and it's dangerous psychologically, it's very dangerous physiologically, and a lot of people in any sort of sport that triathletes, for example, and pretty much anybody that's in an adrenaline-filled endurance kind of sport lends itself to people who are clinically or technically kind of depressed, you know, or suffering anxiety issues and stuff like that. If they're anxious and they're training, that it's going to help calm them. The danger is where you have people who are really down and depressed going there for their endorphin hit, and so they need to keep training more and more and more to get that endorphin hit, just like any other drug, is that you need more and more and more to create the same sort of sensation. So, and I've seen it, and I mean, I was like that when I was in my 20s. I had a bad breakup with a relationship, and ended up seeing a psychologist and speaking to him about what I was going through. And the first thing he did, because I mean, the atypical way of responding if you're an elite athlete or an athlete after a breakup or something like that is then to go train, right? You just turn your anger and frustration and sadness and stuff like that, and you start going running first thing in the morning, start training more. I mean, because you get all these feel-good chemicals which are helping to counteract the feelings that you're having. But as it was explained to me, it's really just a band-aid for your feelings, you know. And because I mean, that's exactly what I was doing, you know. It was a horrible breakup. I didn't do anything wrong, and I got cheated on, and I was very upset. And so I just went, you know, balls deep into my jiu-jitsu and training. And I was really super anxious. I couldn't eat, so I got really shredded, right? Which like to most people would be awesome, right? Like, you know, I had 6 packs on 6 packs on 6 packs. I was training all day. I was winning everything. Like from the outside, you know, like it looked great, but inside it was horrific. You know, I couldn't eat. I was living on a couple of protein shakes a day and maybe a banana. You know, and that's when you know that there's really serious stuff going on. That, you know, sometimes when you get a little bit stressed, you want to eat more, you know, but it's one of the reasons why if you do see a psychologist, they'll ask about your weight quite often. You know, how has your weight been? How's your appetite? Because if your appetite's gone up and you're eating more, then you're a little bit stressed. Yeah, because that's a common thing, right? But if you get really stressed systemically, your digestive system just shuts down and you get very anxious, and so you can't eat, so you lose a lot of weight, and couple that with a lot of hard training to get the endorphins to make you feel good. It's really easy to look like an elite athlete that's got the world at his feet when you're actually struggling a lot. So that's very, very common. You see it in like all sports codes, but like AFL, for example, when I was in Melbourne, AFL players, you know, like when they retire, they go off the rails because not always, but often, and there's been some really famous, you know, um, public demonstrations of it whereby the player is just like loose. Like, yeah, they're amazing on the field. They go party all the weekend. They're always at training. They're like incredible athletes. They got amazing physiques. The career ends and they just go off the deep end, you know, and you know, it's you know, swimmers it's been happening with swimmers, you know, a lot of swimmers just, what kind of mentality does it take to spend 6 hours a day staring at a single black line over and over and over and over and over, doing exactly the same thing constantly for up to 6 hours a day, and that being your career? You know, like, it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that, but it also creates a scenario that I think is not terribly healthy as well, you know. So it's very difficult juggling your balancing training, and then if you get injured, then like that's going to throw another whole, you know, dump of kerosene on it too, because if you're anxious or depressed and then training has become your crutch, and then you get injured and you can't train, then what you're hiding and covering up is going to come out. Yeah, and you're going to blame it on the injury, but it's not the injury. It's like you were covering it up with all your excessive training. You can't now train excessively, and of course the injury will be, you know, upsetting depending upon its severity. It might upset the rest of your life or not, you know, like you could break your wrist, for example. I mean, that's not a biggie for jiu-jitsu because you've got, you know, the rest of your body to use. But you know, like, it can affect people dramatically if you're using jiu-jitsu and using the academy as a crutch. Then if something gets in the way of that, then that can really blow things out of proportion quite badly. So something that people have to learn, and I see it in a lot of, I'm a mountain bike coach as well, and so I see it in my junior races, is that especially if they have big ambitions, then I sit down with the parents and speak to them very openly and honestly about the amount of money and the amount of surgeries and the amount of damage that's going to get done to their body and bike and stuff like that. And is that something that they're prepared for? Is it something they've spoken about? And quite often they haven't. Quite often they're just writing it off. Oh, that's being pessimistic or whatever. You know, 8 weeks down the track, my client's had a crash, as happens, breaks their collarbone, whatever, and reality starts to sink in, right? Is that, you know, like, all of the top downhill racers in the world, all of them are perpetually injured. It's very, very rare that they're not, and it's just a part of that life. And similarly with jiu-jitsu, injuries are gonna happen. You know, like, we spend a lot of time manipulating other people's bodies and having them manipulate ours. There's if there's sweat on the mat, you know, like I smashed up my neck really badly in 2007, just before I sat my black belt test. And at the time, like, it was horrific, you know, like, but I was just doing light training with one of my brown belts. It was my last training session before I went to go sit my black belt test, and he slipped in some sweat and fell on my head. You know, like, we were just doing light flow rolly kind of stuff. It was a little competitive maybe, but, you know, there was nothing untoward. He wasn't trying to guillotine my head off or do anything else. You know, everything we were doing was technically correct, but there was that one variable of sweat on the mat. And when he went to turn the corner and he slipped, he fell, and the way that I was posting on my hand and the way that he fell on my neck, you know, like, it just went snap. It was horrific. There was no music going or anything. It was just the two of us on the mat, and it was like celery snapping, and we both just sat there like shocked because, like, yeah, like, it was really loud. We both heard it very, very, very loudly, and we just kind of sat there and, like, I was like, oh, it's okay. I feel all right. Like, there was no anything, and like, I was shocked by that, you know. About 6 weeks later, then, you know, something dramatic happened, and that affected me for years afterwards. But luckily during my grading it was fine. I wasn't even aware of it. I just thought like, geez, that was lucky, wasn't it? But it did come back and bite me in the ass, and I mean, to this day it's flaring up at the moment, and it's reminding me to do videos like this. So something that you have to you can't really practice it, but the first thing you have to do is, if you're getting sort of an injury, is go see a professional immediately, And as guys, we're not very good at this, and I'm definitely not very good at this. But when I was running my academy full-time in Melbourne, and I had loads of money, and I had like all the very best sports medicine guys all around me, then as soon as there was any sort of anything, I'd be straight there that afternoon. MRIs, what is it? Let's fix it. Let's get it done immediately, These days I'm not in that kind of situation, and so I am a little more stubborn and reluctant to go spend hundreds or thousands of dollars treating an injury. But the thing that you do have to get good at is understanding that when something happens, if it's still niggly like 14 days later, go see someone. And get it looked at, get it treated as soon as possible. And then the mental stuff begins, because I would say like 90% of recovering from any injury or dealing with the injury is mental, right? So you have to just kind of go, okay, now I'm in recovery phase. I'm not in performance phase. I'm not trying to get better. I'm not trying to improve my performance on the mat. I'm not trying to work towards this tournament anymore. Like, this is my priority. And then you kind of just adjust all your expectations, and your goal then is to get back to where you were. Not to move forwards. Like, something's happened. It's like you've got a race car and you've got a puncture. All the wheels falling off. And so you're like, okay, race is done. We're not going to win it. Call it off. Put it in the pits. Let's start the process of fixing it. And that's not racing anymore, right? Now you're trying to get the car back to where it was before you started the race. And depending on the injury, it could take weeks, it could take months, it could take longer than that if it's a severe injury. And so you have to just adjust your expectations of what you can do, what you can't do. Maybe you can't do jiu-jitsu, maybe you have to, I would go do aqua jogging, because even running would aggravate me. So I'd have to go aqua jog, and that was horrible. It was boring. It was soul sucking, but I did it because this is what you have to do in order to get back to where I was, and that was the priority. And so I would suck it up, and I would go do my aqua jogging 3 or 4 days a week, and I hated every minute of it. But I came out the other end a better runner, which was really ironic. I didn't expect that. So I'm a fan of aqua jogging. If you're a runner, it's really useful for it. So being able to just understand that there's a process of rehabilitation, that you give it 7 to 14 days, less if it's like really severe, like go and see someone straight away if you can. And then you've got this process. You'll get your workout protocol from your physio, and then you got to go through your physio, and then you got to go back and see them, and then you keep going, you go to physio, and it's just this annoying process, but you get used to it, and that's what you have to do in order to get back to where you were. And if you skimp on your exercises, if you're too lazy, you can't be bothered, oh no, I don't want to do that, all I want to do is go roll, then you'll go roll and you'll exacerbate the injury, and it's going to prolong the rehab, and then the whole process takes longer. So but you learn this. I mean, we're all stubborn, and we all want to get back on the mat and train as much as we can as soon as possible. But you do have to be smart. If it's a long-standing injury, something you've had from football when you were younger, and then you injure it doing jiu-jitsu, for example, it might, if you've got a good physio, they might just like manage the risk. Like, unless you have surgery, which is kind of what you need, you can either have surgery or you can just accept the fact that you've got a gimpy left knee and you could try and protect it as best you can. Here's some exercises that you need to be doing on a regular basis, and off you go. You know, if you're an elite athlete and you're a competitive jiu-jitsu fighter and like that's your thing, then you have to, again, adjust your focus on the injury, focus on the rehab. No doubt you've got all the discipline and tenacity and persistence and all these sorts of things, all the attributes that you need to be successful on the mat. So now you take those same attributes and you have to point them at the problem, which is this damn injury, and getting that fixed. And sometimes it's very frustrating, you know, like sometimes you can overdo it. Sometimes through, you know, you just want to get back on the mat so badly that you go too hard during your rehab and you can make it worse. And your physio will tell you what the parameters are for your training. And you know, like especially later stage. So like, you know, like I pinged my meniscus, 43 weeks ago or something, so nearly a year ago. And so that's been frustrating because I've been like a one-legged fighter, you know, and I used my left leg a lot because I smashed my right knee up mountain biking. So when I came into jiu-jitsu, my both knees were stuffed, but my right knee was more stuffed. So I used my left leg a lot more. So injuring that has been, you know, and again, I just have to adjust my expectations and go, well, my guard's going to suck, right? and so, you know, that's one of the reasons why my neck's dicky now, because with my guard not working properly, then people are passing my guard, and now they're near my head a lot more often. And, you know, so not having an infallible defense, then people do get near my neck and do give it a squeeze, and then that exacerbates the old injury I had from, you know, decades ago. And so like, God damn it, this knee, I've got to fix this knee. But just being able to enjoy the process, and I think, like, once you're a black belt and you've been on the mat for a few decades and stuff like that, sure. Like for me, it's a different experience, and I'm a coach, and it's a business, and it's my job, and I love it, you know. And the hardest thing then is for me to adjust how I think I'm being perceived. Yeah. So like this is where like imposter syndrome and all this stuff creeps in, because like I can't perform the way that I want because of all these injuries, and then I can get in my head about like what other people are thinking of me when they're watching me, because like if I was watching me, I'd think that I was crap, right? And so like I have to realize that like that's not necessarily the case. It might be, but like whatever, you know. And it's hard to manage that. It's very hard to manage that. You know, when you're used to being a young ass kicker and then you become an old, like less of an ass kicker, and your body's failing you and, you know, all this sort of stuff, and you can't do what you want. It's very easy to think that, you know, one of the things that I think makes successful people successful, especially in like jiu-jitsu and other martial arts, is like, to a degree, we're very hard on ourselves. We're very negative towards ourselves. Yeah. But we use that negativity to drive us. Yeah. Because like giving yourself a pat on the back, oh, you're amazing, you're incredible, all this, like it doesn't really help you a lot. Yeah. But people who are very fussy, whether it's a Formula One driver who's not happy with the performance of his car, who's not happy with his performance, like that's what makes you that kind of person, is that kind of thinking, you know, that you're not good enough, that there's seconds to be found, that there's improvements to be had. And so you're never really totally happy with yourself, or happy with yourself at all. You just think, no, everything about me sucks. Like my guard's terrible. I need to work on my half guard. My passing's awful. You know, even if the rest of the world thinks it's amazing, speak to any like world champion, you know, in jiu-jitsu or other sports and go, hey man, like that was an amazing performance. And they might be very gracious and go, thank you, like, you know, like, but they're almost always going to be in their head like, no, I can do better. I only just won, or I hate second place, you know, I've got a saying, silver is for cutlery, you know, because second just sucks, right? And like recently I got second in some community award thing, right? And I just messaged them back. I go like, don't even contact me about it unless I win it, you know? And then, you know, a few months later, I won another community award and I won it. And I'm like, oh, excellent, great. That was awesome. But like, if it's second place, I'm not interested. Third doesn't exist. Off the podium, forget about it, right? When I was competing, if I got a second place, I might have won everything and then lost the final of the Open. I would punish myself by throwing my gym bag in the bushes outside MSAC, and I would do laps of the Formula One circuit until I basically couldn't walk anymore, you know, and then I'd get on a tram and go home. But that would take hours. I would just punish myself, you know. If I won, I might go out of a few beers with the guys and stuff like that. But losing was just unacceptable, and there's clearly problems here. I need to address them, and it starts the second that I get off the mat when I lost. I don't wait till the next day even. Like, immediately training begins on my weakness and working towards the next tournament. So when you're that hard on yourself, then it's very, I mean, it can propel you to great heights and do amazing things. But if you get injured, for example, and you're still measuring yourself against who you were pre-injury, you know, and you're like, man, I'm getting worse every day and this injury's like stopping me doing that, you can really get in your head. So like, that's why the mental side of recovering from injuries is so important. Yeah. And I think that the earlier that you can reach out and get help from a physio or other professionals helps share some of that responsibility. And so when you have that shared responsibility and there's others kind of helping set a program for you, then I think it's really helpful for your mental health, because you've got others who are gauging you. Like, you're not just going, oh, this is taking too long and it's terrible, because when you go and see the physio, they give you objective feedback and go, well, you're doing really well in these areas, but like this thing here, like, it's still a struggle. Your knee's not stable enough to do this yet. So here's another couple of exercises for this to help this particular, it could be a tracking issue or whatever it is. And so the prescription for the physiotherapy might change throughout the process, and that's very common. The other common thing is that we get overconfident towards the end of the rehab. Like, I'm starting to get that now. I'm starting to forget that my left knee has an issue. And so I'm starting to move, like, you know, a bit faster and a bit freer, and my brain is now like starting to like go back into its old state. And like, I love using my left foot as a De La Riva hook, for example, and I haven't been able to do any of that. I haven't been able to make a hook inside or outside with it for almost a year now. And so my right hip has been copying a hiding because my right leg's been having to try and do everything. And that, again, that's a common thing, is that you start getting other injuries, you know, because other parts of your body are starting to overcompensate if you're starting on the mat all the time, you know. And I mean, I'm on the mat all the time because it's my job. So I have to be very cautious with like the amount of rolling that I'm doing, which is difficult. It's really difficult because it's a lot of fun. Everybody in the gym is having fun. Everyone's training, having fun, and I have to kind of stand there and go, oh, this kind of sucks, doesn't it? And I'm dying to get in there and roll. It's not that I don't want to roll. I'm sitting there, I'm dying inside. And so my way of like staying busy on the mat instead of rolling is to go around and help people, right? So during free training, a lot of the time, we just do free training. But now, if I see something happening, you know, with one of the guys, then I'll go freeze right there, and I go, all right, you want to see this? You're having a problem with this pass or whatever. Yeah. This leg's annoying me. I can't get past it. Okay, jump out. Same situation. This is the way I would handle it. Yeah, and so then I put them back in the situation, and they can keep going. So apologies to my students if it's annoying if I'm interrupting your rolls, but the feedback's been really good, so I'm going to continue to do it. You know, like that's my way of like not rolling, is I have to find something. I can't just like leave the gym and go home, right? So I stay there and I have to be busy. I have to be doing something, right? Because like, I want to be rolling and I want to be enjoying myself like everybody else, but I have to be just cautious, right? I have to be. So it's very much a mental process working through injuries, and it's not fun, but if you want to stay in the art and you want to work your way through to black belt and beyond, then it's something that is going to pop up for sure, and you have to be mature about it. You have to be disciplined and not re-injure yourself and exacerbate that injury or create another injury, which is very, very common. Anyway, I hope that helps. Try and stay injury free. Remember the training triangle: fitness, strength, flexibility. Try and make it as even as you can for longevity, or if you have a deficiency in one of those areas, then work on that. Anyway, that's my advice. Stay healthy and happy, get on the mat, have fun, and hopefully you're enjoying these videos.